Rock the Ripple. Rock the Ripple. The Rock the Ripple Podcast with Narita McInnes.
Let's do this. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Rock the Ripple podcast. I'm your host, Narita McInnes. It is so awesome to be here with you as always. And as always, today is another very exciting day because I have another very special guest on the show. She is, get ready for it, a specialist fertility coach, embryologist, andrologist, and chemist with a Bachelor of Science majoring in chemistry, biochemistry, and biological chemistry, with over 25 years experience across all areas of IVF and fertility treatments. She is also the host of the Let's Talk IVF podcast and is trained in cognitive behavioural therapy, hypnosis, neuro-linguistic programming, and timeline therapy. And after working with over 10,000 clients, today's guest uses both science and modern coaching techniques to provide people with positive results and successful outcomes. There is, of course, so much more to this incredible woman. She is the one and only Sophia Baseotto. Sophia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. My gosh, that was a very long introduction.
It was, wasn't it? I was just like reading everything that you do and I'm just absolutely blown away. Like, I don't know if you've ever slept in your whole life because there's just so much in there. My gosh.
Yeah, look, it's been, I think I spent 20 years in the clinical sector, so in the laboratory, and spoke to, thousands and thousands of people in that fertility space. So those conversations led me into the coaching and that emotional component of trying to conceive, because there's a lot of trauma around trying to conceive, and it goes on for some people for many, many years. It's not just a couple of tries or a year or so. Some of them have been doing it for a long, long time. So with all those conversations, I thought there's a massive gap here of what they need and what they're getting in the clinical setting. So that's when I started getting into the coaching and that sort of background to help people on their journey to conceive. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, there's so much there. And I have a dear friend who it took such a long time. And I know that it is such a big process. And there is so many factors and layers when it comes to this, isn't there? Do you want to talk? Oh, actually, before we dive into everything, do you want to talk a bit more about, have I missed anything?
No. You covered pretty much everything. That was very impressive. So no, there are so many layers. And, before people even get to the fertility clinics, some of them have been trying themselves for at least a year, sometimes 2 or 3, because they think, it's going to be okay. I'm young enough. Everything's all right. And they'll take their time to even seek advice as to what's going on. And the recommendation is dependent upon your age. If some people will wait 6 months, and if you're over, 35, you should be definitely not trying more than 6 months. And under that age group, they say, 12 months is good. Try. And if there's nothing happening, then go and have some further investigations. But it's amazing when you talk to even the young people, and they did a study at the universities asking them about conception and fertility. And this was a university-based study, and they had no idea as, to whether there was a time limit or whether they should be thinking of things earlier on. Most of them thought that IVF was a fix. If I have trouble, I'll just have that and it'll all be okay. Mm-hmm. And, that was a big misconception. And these are the young people at university. So they're educated. They've, had all the supposedly had all the information given to them through schools and things, but they were still quite clueless as to, when they need to start thinking about this and how long it potentially could take. And also that IVF is not the cure-all. There's a lot of women and men that go home without that baby after that entire process.
Yeah. And I think, this, and it's such, like you said, it can be a very triggering topic for a lot of people as well. And I can imagine bringing in the coaching and everything that you've brought into it, because it's not just one thing, is it? It's not just science. It's not just the coaching. And it's so different for so many people. And of course, this last 3 or 4 years, we've seen a lot of stuff happening there too. So can you talk a bit about that as well?
Yeah, so in the last 3 or 4 years, it's actually been 4.5 now when you think this all started at the beginning of 2020. It seems to have been going on forever. a never-ending story. So around about that time, we had, talk about these particular shots that were coming out. And that in itself didn't concern me. When I started to get concerned is when I started to do a little bit more research. And when I started to do that research and I read the product inserts, which no one ever does, and I saw that the clinical trials ended in 2023, 24, 25, they're giving them out in 2020, 21, but the trial doesn't finish for many years. So people weren't actually aware that they were part of a trial. And you can't give consent, and there's an article on this as well, that you cannot give informed consent, a journal article published on these particular shots, because you weren't aware. First of all, you weren't aware you were in a trial, and secondly, you weren't aware that there were all these side effects, and there were masses of side effects. And then we can look at our own Australian databases, the DAEM, and that's looking at, the bad things that happen. And you can then look at the international ones, and the international ones, as you can imagine, have a lot more numbers. So reporting is supposedly around the 10%, probably less. If you consider that and looking at the broad range of problems that happened after these particular shots, and to give you an example, we're talking anything from elevated or decreased testosterone levels right through to cancer, bleeding problems, just all manner of problems that were not seen before, and they had problems afterwards. There's a whole section in the World Health Organization one, which actually details thousands and thousands of problems that happened after these shots. And that was, to me, was very, very alarming.
Yeah, as it would be. And with your science background and being able to have access to papers, and also just the knowledge in the nous to know how to read through everything and just where to go for all this information. What did that, you started to see this thing. What did that do for you in your practice and also your view on the world? How did you, come to terms with that?
Yeah, look, at that point in time, there was, and I don't follow any mainstream media, so I don't watch commercial television, I don't listen to commercial radio, and I never read any of the newspapers. So a lot of my information was coming from the conversations I was having with people. And I was getting, people even not in the fertility space reaching out to me for assistance at this time, even on the basics, such as, wearing coverings across your face. Now, that was a massive problem for a lot of people. And, I've been in the operating theatre thousands of times wearing a face mask, which is where you're supposed to, for the only reason that I don't want to actually spit into people's open wounds when they were on the table having some sort of surgery. And it was, again, fertility related surgeries, but there's still, open wounds, and it's a sterile environment. That's the reason I would be wearing it. And, people were being asked for the workplace, and, it was just, so I was getting a lot of people in the general population reaching out to me, mainly because I've been in that science background and been in a theatre and clinical setting, and they were reaching out to me for assistance. But also I was getting a lot of conversations from people, having normal cycles, periods, and then all of a sudden having problems with their periods around this time. And I'm on a lot of forums where I answer questions, and there were a lot more than I normally get. Now, people will say, look, you're in that space. That's why people come to you. And I was saying, yes, but this is astronomical. This is, 10 times more than I would normally expect to see. And the range, the age range, even young sort of women, having gone to a few gynecologists in some instances and still not getting answers. So it was actually, again, quite explosive in terms of the conversations I was having, the range of people that I was talking to, and it was a lot more than normal. And even in my space where I talk about period problems and because everyone will say, but that's what you do. I said, yes, it is, but I'm getting an influx of questions from young people, and also from people that have never had any issues and aren't even trying to conceive and are having problems, period related problems. So that was significant, and that was happening early in 2020 and 2021.
And like people will be getting their period when they're not supposed to be getting their period, and I mean, I even heard of people who had finished and perhaps gone through menopause, but then they're getting their period back. Were you seeing that as well too?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's supported by the data. So when people will doubt that, you can actually go to our Australian database and you can see that. And, they're 71 and they've got, bleeding problems, period problems. So you can see the age and you can see the problems that are coming up. So for those who are looking for the data because they need to see, they're doubting Thomas's, they've got to see the data, it's there. And also you'll see in the same database, which is our Australian one, you'll see breastfeeding babies that have having problems and various health problems. And then young children that, again, at a young age, and we do see with all the hormones and things that are in foods, we have been seeing young girls getting their periods earlier. That's been happening for the last, 20, 30, 40 years as we see changes in the food supply and what's happening to what we eat. So we have seen that, but not at this level. And as I said, when they do put the age into these databases, when you actually look at what's happening and how young these people are, it is horrifying when you start to read the problems that are in those databases. And again, it's knowing what you're looking for as well, because a lot of people, when they go in there, they're not aware of what the conditions mean because they'll use the medical term. So you have to have a certain background in order to be able to interpret that, because even going in and looking, it's like, oh, there's a 6-year-old girl and there's a 10-year-old boy and there's, and all of these things, and they've got all the medical terms there. So it's hard to read and interpret for most people.
And I think that's why it's so good having someone like yourself who really understands it. I mean, I think one of the stats was also the fertility for the people who were trying to get pregnant. That I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was a stat like 90% or something. Forgive me, I can't remember, but maybe you know the stat I'm talking about there.
Yeah, look, there was a Brisbane obstetrician, gynecologist, who reported the very similar figures to what we saw. And the figures you're referring to are in relation to women who've had these shots and that were pregnant. So what we saw, and the table that they published was misinterpreted in the calculation. So when you read, and again, this comes down to people really reading the fine print, which is what scientists do. That's what we always do. We read the product insert, we read the fine print because we're looking for that sort of information. We're looking for the data. And when you read the table, they had this graph and they had these numbers in this table. But what they had done is they'd miscalculated, because 700 out of the 800 and something women that were in this table had their shot after 20 weeks. They had it in the last trimester, so after 26 weeks, yet they put them in the data for less than 20 weeks. So they bolstered their numbers to give you a 12 point something percentage of, there wasn't much problems with pregnancy and having this shot. When the reality is, when you remove those 700 from that equation, you now have an 81.8% chance of having a spontaneous abortion less than 20 weeks, if you're less than 20 weeks pregnant. Now, that is a significant amount. Now, the 90% you're talking about is actually 92.3% if you're less than 13 weeks. So in that first trimester, those who had the shot had a 92.3% chance of having a spontaneous abortion. Those statistics are absolutely mortifying. That's published data. When that data went out, people literally were screaming from the rooftops. And again, I think, you have to understand, and I'm trying to explain this to relatives recently, because they were saying, oh, but the doctors, our friend runs a hospital. And I'm like, when you understand that the board that controls those registrations, they control 15 boards, doctors, nurses, midwives, paramedics, optometrists, psychologists, they're all controlled by a board, AHPRA, okay? It gives them a registration number, and they put out a position statement. And it's in my podcast. I'll give you the links to that, because all these things I'm talking about, I've actually referenced so people don't have to go and look for it.
Yeah.
But in that statement, it says that if you say anything against this narrative, this is the narrative we're putting out there on social media, anywhere, you lose your license. And people did lose their license to practice if they spoke out. So for people that say, oh, but my doctor, oh, but my friend, oh, but they run a hospital, doesn't matter. They're controlled. And they are controlled because here's the position statement that says you cannot say anything other than the narrative.
Yeah.
So that's quite alarming. So this doctor in Brisbane again spoke out because he was seeing around 75% spontaneous abortion. I don't know. He was having a lot of trouble. I dare say if he continued to publish and talk about it, he would have lost his license. I haven't followed up since then. But anyone that did speak out literally lost their license to practice. And there's lots of them, anaesthetists, psychologists that I've spoken to that are not practicing anymore because they've had their licenses removed. And others didn't go down that pathway, knew it was bad, they just stopped working in the industry. So we saw, massive gaps in healthcare because, the nurses that had it and doctors that were in the practice and in the hospitals were getting sick, as you'd imagine, and they didn't have the staff to cover them. So now, we've got agency staff, the ones that left because they didn't like what was going on, are now in hot demand. They've been working constantly because there's lots of gaps.
Yeah, and it's just, it's crazy, really. It's just crazy that this has all had to happen, and, to not be able to speak the truth. And, there's a lot of people who I'm sure would have that hanging over their head. And then those who were like, well, I'm not going to stand for this, that walked away, and, which would have just been just as hard because they're in the job, no doubt, to help people. People in this industry are wanting to help. So, that's all part of it too, isn't it?
Yeah, look, exactly. And it would have been a tough choice because you spent years. Now, depending on where you're working at, even at whatever the base level, you spent years training to be in that role. And the people that go into healthcare typically are that. They want to help people. That's exactly right. That's why they go into it. And the ones who took the time to do this research and said, you know what, no way, I'm not doing it. They stepped out. They worked in other areas. Often many of them have gone back into the workplace now because they've dropped all the silly things that they had in place. If you don't do this, if you're not part of this clinical experiment, which you don't know about, you cannot work. So a lot of them took some time out. They worked in different areas, and many of them have gone back because they've dropped all of those things now.
Yeah. And so, and I know like a lot of people who are listening to this or tuning in, watching, they'll be very familiar with everyone's familiar with what's been going on, obviously. And from here, what is the solution? Because I know that we are very powerful creatures and that we can heal ourselves, but there's so much to tackle here, isn't there? Not only fertility for people who wanting to have a family, but also just health in general. There's just so much there. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I'm 100% with you. The human body is absolutely magnificent when it comes to healing. It can heal anything, and I mean anything. And if you look at any of the Dr. Joe Dispenza testimonials and all of his published research where he's actually showing scans before and after, phenomenal. We're talking stage 4, end of life cancer healed. Now, these experiments, and again, people want to see the data. It's there. People can and do heal themselves all the time. We've forgotten how to do it. And a lot of that, when you actually, again, you're talking about not necessarily fertility, but health in general. If you look at the animal population, for example, their chances of having a pregnancy or a successful outcome are in the 90s, 94, 92, 98. And if you look at humans, we're like 25% on a good month. And you got to think, okay, we're the apex predators here. What are we doing wrong? And you don't have to look far. Food, environment, the water, the heavy metals, the fluoride, everything, the pesticides. I was looking at someone's comment this morning about how good butter is for you. And it made me laugh because I tested it at university, and even years ago, it had pesticides in it. So I can only imagine the level of pesticides that are in it now. I don't care if you're on an organic farm, because the water, the soil, it all connects. It blows in the air, the pesticides they spray. So, and we do see that in farmers as well. We see, them having trouble conceiving and having multiple miscarriages as well, due to the chemical exposure they have. So if you think about humans' health, all of the things in our environment, it's amazing how we, still continue to thrive, really, considering all the things that we do. But yes, there's a lot you can do, irrespective of trying to conceive. If you're talking about, young people looking at how they can improve their health, or if they might be older, they want to say, okay, what can I do? So much that we can do to improve our health, regardless of whether we've had these shots or not. And look, I've got a number of people, but a very close friend whose daughter was impacted by this, and she was very badly neurologically damaged, to the point of not knowing what she was doing, where she couldn't function. And she's actually, like, I've seen her recently, she's come such a long way. She's amazing. She can go out and drive and do things that she wasn't able to do before. So absolutely, healing is possible. We are incredible human beings, and we are capable of healing. But it's having that guidance and talking to people that are, doing all the things that you need to do and getting on the right path. And sometimes it's just those small changes, and you start to see a significant difference in your health.
Absolutely. And I love that you said all that, and also that the work that you do with the hypnosis, the NLP, all that sort of stuff too, because it plays such a big role, and every single person is different. And I guess you would know better than any, like, our environment really does play into how we show up in the world and the patterns and programs that we've been dealing with. And I'm sure you've worked with thousands of people, not one person would be exactly the same. And I'm sure there would be trends and things like that. But what have you found, like, when working with all of these people, like, how have you been able to best help? Or just, I mean, I'd love to just hear some of those stories, and just, what you got to share.
Look, and I think you've got to take a holistic approach. So typically when you go down a pathway, and there could be any health problem, they'll be honing in on what the problem is, and they'll give you a diagnosis, right? And when people get a diagnosis, they're put into a box. But, when you look at someone holistically, so I'm looking at everything. I'm looking at what they're eating. I'm looking at what they're drinking. I'm looking at their environment, their work, their stress, their sleep habits, very important, just their daily routine. And when you have a look at that whole picture, doesn't matter what health problem you've got, there will be changes you can make, significant changes. So even reducing your stress, for example. Now, a lot of people, in today's world, they're super stressed. They've got 150 things on. They get into the car. There's road rage. It's like, there's a constant barrage of stress. Now, the problem with stress, just at the very basics, which everyone can relate to, is when you get a stress response, and humans are the only species that do this, every other animal species will literally get stressed, and 5 minutes later they're calm. They switch it off. We will be worrying and stressing, and oh my gosh, this, that, and the other. But we don't switch it off oftentimes. And the thing is, it raises adrenaline and cortisol. So we have a hormonal response to that. Now, if you do not switch that off and get rid of those hormones, you either, normally you run, it's fight, flight, freeze. You do something with that stress response. We don't do anything. We'll just dwell on it and keep dwelling on it and do nothing. Like sitting in a rocking chair going nowhere. That's what our stress response is. And the problem is, we've got all these hormones in our bodies. No matter what people say, you've got hormones now racing around your body. You've got, glycogen ready to give you, energy bursts. So you can run and you can escape. And we don't do any of that. So these hormones are now sitting in our body. So what happens to those hormones? Well, if you don't exercise, you don't walk, you don't do any breathing techniques, you do nothing. Now you're going to get these hormones in your body causing inflammation, causing the chronic problems and the diseases that we see. Again, something as simple as that, like reducing the stress in your life, 100% is going to reduce the inflammation in your body. At a biochemical level, you're going to be doing yourself some benefit. So those simple things. And, again, you've got to go through and look at the whole picture. And then look at that individual person and say, okay, what can we do? Break it down into small pieces, because you're not going to go and change everything immediately, but you start with small steps. those small steps are significant. So one of the clients I had, and she had a lot of health issues going on. She had a lot of inflammation. She had implants that had ruptured, which caused chronic, and I mean, joint pain, just all over the body, not just localized.
And they were still in there, ruptured? She was living with them ruptured?
You have to get them removed because that's causing so many issues. But again, so there was that issue, and her husband had problems. And so, the work is looking at all of those things. What's going on? She's got chronic inflammation. Okay, baby steps. What can we take? And literally after only a couple of weeks and a couple of sessions, the stress levels were starting to reduce. We look at where she can improve things in her life. And again, this is the coaching background. What can we do? Let's make it easy. Let's make it simple. And let's do baby steps and support through that. I mean, you can't go off and say, here you go, off you go. Good luck with that. You need to have that support and accountability so that you can improve and make changes. Now, she ended up falling pregnant naturally within a very short space of time, because she made some changes. Now, you struggle with change because humans don't like change. It's frightening. It's scary. We could be hurt. Who knows what will happen? We instinctively are pattern behavior creatures. We want to do the same thing over and over again because we know it works and we know it keeps us safe. But, the health implications, as I said, just stress alone, that's one thing. You can make significant differences in your life and your health, no matter what the condition is, no matter what you're trying to achieve. Because if you can reduce stress, you're going to reduce your body's overall inflammation, which is the basis and precursor to all disease. When you look at all the symptoms, it'll be inflamed something. You decrease inflammation, and you're going to see massive health benefits. As I said, no matter what health condition you've got, especially the chronic ones. So people with chronic health conditions, the number one thing they've got to be looking at doing is that, reducing stress and therefore their body's inflammation, and they're going to be feeling the benefits immediately, literally. Yeah.
That is so cool. And I mean, I just love that you do that and that you break things down and make it simple. I do the same in the work that I do. It's like bite-sized pieces, because as much as we'd love to just change a lifetime, usually it's a lifetime and it's ancestral as well, all in one go. You can't do that. So to be able to just do one thing at a time, and then you build that momentum and also the confidence in yourself that, hey, I can do this one thing. What is the next thing? Do you feel that too?
Yeah, absolutely. So once you've got that one step and you take another baby step and you've got the support. So because if you don't have support when you're trying to facilitate any change, things fall over very quickly. Life gets in the way, the children, the partner, the friends, the family, everything gets in the way. And then all of a sudden it stops. So if you can get help with those changes, a little bit of support, when you build momentum, absolutely, you're off and running. Next thing you know, you're changing all sorts of things. But you've had that support and you've started with the baby steps. And again, the most significant area for someone in their life is going to be different. For a lot of people, it is stress, and we can always work with stress and time management. But other areas of their life, they're struggling. So it's like taking a look at that whole picture. Where can we help? How can we help reduce that sort of anxiety or that problem or that challenge that's taking up a lot of your time and your energy, so we can have more energy elsewhere? And looking at that holistic picture is not a common thing. If you go to someone, for example, you've got a health condition, most people will go to their doctor. They're not sitting down and saying to you, right, what do you eat and drink every day? What's your day look like? How's your stress level? They're just not doing it. It's like, what's your problem? Okay, we'll give you a blood test and here, take a pill. See you next time. They're not sitting down and spending, it'll take a good half an hour, 45 minutes to an hour to explore what's going on, different for everybody. Find that problem area and let's start there and let's start to see what we can do. And the health improves drastically when you start to baby steps, but start to target where they need to have some attention.
I can see why you've worked with thousands and thousands of people, Sophia. I think it's that accountability as well. And I can feel how passionate you are about wanting to help others. And ultimately, you would be empowering them because it all starts with them anyway. So to have that accountability, it's so true, because life gets in the way. And if you don't have that support or someone keeping you on your toes, it's easy to sort of slip back into to things. We've all done it, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, again, and, when people talk to you about, change and problems and things like that, it's like, okay, when you're ready to make that change, then reach out to me, because, people like to talk about the problems, but don't like to do anything. And it's like, okay, well, have you tried this? Well, no. Okay, but maybe try and do that. Maybe have this step. But again, unless you've got someone holding you accountable, even those suggestions of change is too much, because we are very predictable, very much pattern oriented. So we will fall out of that. To change a habit or to introduce a good habit, they will say you've got to do it for 100 days. If you do something for 100 days, chances are, and you make it, most people will fall off before then, you will change that habit, get rid of an old one that's not working, or introduce something new. 100 days, now you've got a new pattern of behavior, and it becomes, the regular thing for you to do. It's hard to stick to that on your own, though. Most people fall off that 100-day wagon.
They do. And I think that's why the accountability is just so important, so important. I mean, and I guess too, like if someone has a catalyst moment in their life, and sometimes that will change everything. 100 days will be like a drop in the ocean for them. They're like, I'm changing everything. But it doesn't always work like that. So, but yeah, I love this conversation. What are you at the moment, like what are you most passionate about at the moment with all, because there's so much that you do, like from your intro, where do you love spending your time, and what are you doing most, and and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, look, where I spend the most time is once people have already, got into the fertility clinics and they've had a cycle and it's been unsuccessful. That's where my major group of clients will come from, and the conversations I have are around those people. What I would be loving to do more of is talk to people before they went to the clinic. So actually have that comment when they're trying to conceive, before they get there. That would be a really powerful time to do some work. And then the plan is they don't even get there. And that often happens. They won't get to the clinics because they'll actually fall pregnant naturally. And even the young people, when you read these studies where they have no clue about, what fertility is, whether there's a time limit, and, the actual statistics of how successful this IVF will be, to talk to those young people and to work with them about fertility preservation. So, changing your health habits to preserve, your body and your integrity and your systems, and keep yourself as healthy as you can, and also to preserve that. So it's a big thing now where a lot of women are freezing their eggs, they're going and they're traveling and they're, careers and trying to afford a house in Sydney and all sorts of things, kind of put, the baby on the back burner because there's so many other things to do. So in those instances, young women freezing eggs is a really good thing, because then they've got like a snapshot in time of, even if they're 40 and they froze their eggs at 25, they've had the same chance of that 25-year-old conceiving because they've got the young eggs. Yeah, so it's a good way of giving them a backup plan. Again, there's no guarantees. We can never say, oh, you freeze your eggs, you definitely get pregnant, but it's another option for women that are more focused on other things, careers, travel, what have you. So it gives them a little bit of a backup plan, if you like. And more women are doing that at the moment, but men can do the same thing, because, most of my conversations are with women. Typically, it would be nice to have more with men, because men have fertility issues when they're older. They think they can go on and father children till they're 95. Well, that's not the case, because they have DNA fragmentation. They have all sorts of things happen. And sperm counts have been declining over the last 50 to 70 years. We've got evidence of that. There's lots of data out there. And again, you're looking at the environment, the food they eat, the drinks, and all of the nasty things. So, all of the products that are in our environment have caused the sperm rates to drop. So we know that. And then you've got as I said, all the chemicals that cause fragmentation. So even men, they think they're virile and they can father children until they're however, but that's not the case. So, having those conversations with the young men, they can also freeze sperm, when they're younger, again, as a backup plan, which most of them will never even consider, because they have this misconception that they're fertile forever. Not correct. So again, having more of those conversations, empowering young men and women, I think would be a really good thing to do. So have an education set up for them so that they can have some sessions and they can, think, okay, well, maybe I will do that. That's a good idea. Give them a backup plan, which I think would be good.
Yeah, that'll be amazing. How do we get to the people? Because like you said, you don't want them to, you would prefer that they didn't have to come to the clinic and do all of that. So how do you reach people at that time?
Yeah, look, then that's the $1 million question. How do you get there? So I guess, in terms of the younger people, you could do university education sessions. That would work really well, because that's when they're planning on a career or traveling or whatever they're going to do, and they're making out life plans, in the next 10 years, 20 years, this is what I'm doing. That would be an ideal time to catch people, because they are at their most fertile anyway. And they could do some extra plans, plan B, like, this is what I'm going to do because I'm not ready for the next however many years. I'm going to go off and do that. I think that would be the ideal. I mean, ultimately, it'd be nice to get into schools and teach, young children. I mean, my daughter would be talking about embryology at school all the time. She was at a Catholic school. I was always waiting for them to be ringing me saying, Sophia, what are you? Because she knew about, sperm, eggs, all of the things at a very young age. So she'd be at school talking. She had the egg and sperm pen, which she tipped up upside down, and, and she would take it to school. I'm going, oh my gosh, That's awesome. This is Catholic school. I'm going to be in so much trouble. But I think the younger you teach children, the better, for all health things, not just about, fertility preservation and protection, but your whole body health. And if you can have those conversations at a really early age, you're going to empower those young men and women of the future to make different choices about their health, about their family planning, and about, looking after their fertility, which is conversations that aren't happening. They don't happen until everything's going wrong and all the wheels have fallen off. And then by that stage, you're playing catch up. Okay, let's look at all the things and there's a lot more you have to change. Whereas if you have those conversations earlier, hopefully we won't even have to have the conversation, because they'll be a lot healthier and make different choices and have backup plans. So yeah, it would be nice. And I guess the most opportune time is at university. But look, this sort of education about health and how to protect your, your body systems and how to, all of those things can happen at a young age. We could be doing that as school age children. They need to know about the body systems. They need to know about health, remaining fit and active and hydration, the importance of sleep, all of those things they should be learning in school. They're really important to their health, and they're not taught.
Yeah, no, they're not. So we need to just make lots of like minions of your daughter just to go out to all the schools and bring the pen and just share all the information.
I know, Catholic school and everything. I thought, oh my, I'm getting in so much trouble. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. I mean, and that's the thing. There's so, I mean, and I know that there's, and you would know too, there's so many people doing their best to do that. And I guess parents as well, being able to instill the information into their children, get them to pass it on, all that sort of stuff. I mean, coming back to community and sharing knowledge that way as well. Like there's so many ways we can do this, isn't there?
Yeah. And it's just opening the conversation. So starting that conversation, having a conversation about, all the health benefits. So in my podcast, you mentioned it before, Let's Talk IVF. I've interviewed so many different people. So acupuncturists, different health professionals, the spinal alignment people, the naturopaths, so many different people, because it's not all about one thing. Sometimes you can, tweak other things. So people might have had chronic back pain. And if your spine's out of alignment, for example, you will have inflammation. And inflammation in your lower back area is inflammation around your reproductive organs. You've got inflamed tissue. That's not a good thing. So again, depending on what that person is experiencing, there could be a whole range of things that they can do in order to get to optimal health. And it's having that conversation holistically and saying, right, okay, this is what we could do. Right, you've got this, let's try these things. And I'm a big advocate of acupuncture as well. I've had acupuncture over the years, and it's just so good. People will say, oh, but I don't like needles. And here's me, like a porcupine, fast asleep on the table. It's like, not painful. So again, there's a lot of Eastern medicine that is so good. The Ayurvedic medicine, the herbal medicine, and the acupuncture, traditional Chinese medicine, they've been around for thousands of years helping women. And there's some fertility clinics that are actually offering acupuncture sessions as well around the time of embryo transfer. So they're moving more, they're getting there. I mean, they're very clinical. The hospitals traditionally, on the straight and out, they don't sort of go anywhere outside of that, but they're starting to appreciate that yoga practices and anything that can reduce that stress in your body is going to, reduce inflammation, is going to make you healthier ultimately, and make you emotionally healthier, which is going to give you a better chance of, trying to conceive or whatever the health issue is. If you can get yourself emotionally healthier, you're going to have a better outcome, no matter what it is. Even if it's just a health condition and not trying to conceive, you're going to have a better outcome. So there's so many people that are doing good things and helping women and men who are trying to conceive, but in all areas. So it's not just a specific, we're going to look at you here where you are. It's let's look at all of those things and how you can benefit and get some changes. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think as well too, like underneath everything as well, there's quite often there's trauma there that hasn't been looked at or needs to be worked through or just needs to be acknowledged, loved, and let go. And I think, that's stuff that people don't realize or may not realize that really can impact the way that you show up in the world and your health to many different extremes, doesn't it?
Yeah, look, and it's funny you say that, because part of what I send out to people before I talk to them is I send them out just a list of a few questions, and that sort of helps me. If they give it to me beforehand, it'll help me direct the conversation. But I'll actually ask people questions about what they believe is impacting their chances of conceiving and their trouble conceiving. And it's amazing the conversations that will come out of that, exactly what you're saying, that they hold a lot of anger because of this and that, and and because they feel great shame because they had, previous abortions planned because they weren't ready to be pregnant. And, they must be being punished for that. So those questions, and again, it's about asking the right questions, you'll uncover those underlying traumas, because absolutely everything will have a root cause and it's linked to something that happened. And oftentimes you'll see that show up as health conditions. So if you've got that underlying trauma, you don't treat it, it is there in the background underneath. You will end up with other chronic health issues. And funny thing is, I was talking to a lady the other day, never met this lady. And in the course of the conversation, she was talking about ultrasound. She mentioned something about a previous partner. And I've never met this person before, but just in the conversation and the few questions I asked her, I pretty much uncovered, yes, she had been sexually abused, and this is the reason she has trouble having these type of exams and this, that, and the other, these pelvic exams and ultrasounds and what have you. But again, she never mentioned anything to me about the trauma, the abuse that she's had or anything. She was just talking about an ultrasound she had, and it wasn't even that she hated the ultrasound, but just the way she was describing what happened. And I was like, oh, okay. So it impacts all areas of your life when you've had a trauma. And oftentimes you'll see that, she had recurrent infections and they couldn't pinpoint it. They couldn't treat it, multiple infections. And then, identified, okay, there's a trauma. Well, how about let's work on that? Infection's gone. It happens so many times, because your body will do whatever it needs to do in order for you to deal with the problem. And if you don't address it and you keep ignoring it, you'll end up with some sort of disease or some sort of infection or some sort of problem. We see it time and time and time again. So it's too much. And again, they've got studies on all of these things where they've tried all these different medications, all these issues that have come up. And here we found that reducing stress and exercise and having counseling, oh, look, now this is all resolved. Time and time and time again. So too many not to think, right, there's a significant difference there with trauma, unhealed trauma, and the health conditions that we have today, because it influences every decision you make.
It absolutely does, doesn't it? And I feel like, you know, trauma doesn't have to be a huge thing either, like, because your body still reacts the same way, doesn't it? And I think people may not sometimes put those two pieces together, like, maybe someone just picked on you at school one day, but it caused such a thing in your body that it created a pattern that then, without looking at it, you can't heal that. And that's why it's so important to be, like you're saying, to do the whole big picture. And even, I guess you'd probably do this too when you're getting their picture as well, is just put anything in there that comes in, even if it seems insignificant. And if it pops in, then write it down, Do you do that?
Absolutely, 100%. So anything that comes up will be written down. Any
Mm.
word, any phrase, any memory. Again, when you're doing timeline therapy, you're looking for those sort of key words, and you're trying to get to the root cause. With any of these things, you're trying to get to the root cause, because if you can move, it's like scaffolding. So you said you get picked on at school. Now, our brain, our dinosaur brain, is designed to help us and keep us safe and keep us alive. So you will have, yes, you get the actual behavior you picked on at school. There is a biochemical response that happens. You'll get the stress hormones released. You will have a response happen inside you biochemically, and you will resolve that issue. Now, however you resolve that issue is now imprinted as a memory. So if someone says something nasty to you and you're now 30 years old, you have a memory of how you dealt with that incident, similar type of incident, being, someone being nasty to you or calling you a name or whatever it might have been. And you had a memory implant. Yes, this is how I dealt with it before. You have a biochemical stress response as well, same sort of signature as to how you dealt with that. And you will 99% of the time deal with it the same way. You will have a certain reaction to that. So when you speak to people, and you would know this, is you speak to people and they're talking about something, there's a story, but underneath that story is the real reason. So, you could be road rage. Well, it's got nothing to do with the people in their cars. Yes, people are mad on the road. That's a given. You've got to go out there, assuming that will be the case, and you'll never be disappointed. But that's not the story. It's like, why are you getting so triggered? What's going on around you? Your stress response is off the charts, but why? What is triggering you? Because it's got nothing to do with the people in the cars. It's got nothing to do with the people in the, that you're talking to at the supermarket or whoever it might be. It's always you. So what is it that is causing that reaction? And again, asking a series of questions and getting to that root cause is part of the fun, because once you uncover that, like the scaffolding on a building, you take out the bottom of that scaffolding, it all collapses. So anything on that, someone picked on me at school, and therefore, if, I have this reaction, is gone, because you take out the root cause, you remove those bottom scaffoldings, it collapses. Now that's gone. It's no longer part of you because you've removed that. That trauma's gone. You'll find another one, but that one's gone.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun, because there's so many people, they don't realize that, from an early age, we are imprinting, we are storing memories, and this is how I resolve that. This is what happened. This has kept me safe. Right. I'm going to store that. That's my memory bank. And we build on that. And it is like layers of scaffolding. We keep building and building and building on that problem. This is how I resolved it. And oh, look, I did it again and I'm still alive. It's not necessarily the best way to deal with it, but we do that instinctively and unconsciously all the time. Throughout the day, for everything we do.
Yeah. I'm glad you said it was fun, because I agree. Like, even though it can be, and I say this so often, it's like not always sexy, it's not always pretty, it's like it can be gut wrenching when you're looking at this stuff, but it is fun, because you then go, okay, I'm releasing this now. I see what that is, and that doesn't need to be a part of my life. Thanks for keeping me safe at the time you needed to keep me safe, but now I've got some bigger fish to fry, so it is. And then that helps you to become more of who you are. and that just the essence of your awesomeness. And I think, those layers of scaffolding that can be sitting there, they're getting in the way of you being your full potential, or conceiving, or showing up how you really know in your heart that you want to show up. Do you feel that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, obviously, from my perspective, it's trying to conceive. I've worked with people that aren't trying to conceive as well, because coaching is coaching no matter where you're at. And underlying all of these issues and traumas that people have will be other health conditions. So they'll be suffering panic attacks. They'll be, again, not showing up, not in the work environment they want to be. They don't have the job, they're not satisfied in some way, shape, or form. Absolutely. Those questions and uncovering what it is that's holding them back, that blockage. I mean, everyone's looking for that. It's like, well, why aren't I doing my dream job, or have the baby, or, I'm having all these other health issues? And we'll find those blockages, which, even for myself, because, you can't have done this work or do this work without doing your own work, because oftentimes, and you may find this yourself, people will come to you, and in that process of helping them to heal themselves, you actually get the healing as well, because you're going through that process with them. So no matter what, it's a win-win situation for both people, because every single time that someone gets that healing, you're also getting that learning, and you're also getting that session as well. So it's empowering. And I love it, because people are happier and they're healthier. And, again, they're conceiving, to get a picture of a screenshot and someone's sending you a pregnancy positive test or an ultrasound picture, and again, just completely makes your day, or they've had some major breakthrough. It's why you do what you do, because it is so incredible to have those news flash up on your phone. It's like, yes, they've made it, they've got to that milestone. It's so good to do. And empowering for them, and also, it's sort of like a blessing for you as well. At the same time, it's a win-win.
Yeah. Oh, it totally is. I'm picturing you just getting these screenshots. Like, your heart would just want to explode with just joy when you see that, because you know how happy those people are. And yeah, it's a total win-win. It's so beautiful. And we're all here to help each other and to do that. And like you said, they're coming to you, but they're helping you too. Like, we're all growing and evolving together, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, when you do help someone else, and it is almost like that pay it forward, because, in the process of helping that someone become, healthier and happier, and, their true self, better version of themselves, they're going to go and help other people, and they spread that joy to others. Even by just being around them and being happy, they are spreading it and paying it forward. So when you think about it, and it's that ripple, the throwing the stone in the pond thing, that's the effect of just helping one person, because that even in their work environment, their family environment, they are just going to be so much happier and spreading that joy. That, again, it's fantastic to see, and we need more of it. We need much more of it, because it is just pay it forward.
Yeah, I'm so with you. The ripple, we can just like rock that. That's and we just keep spreading that out. It's so powerful, and that's how we see change. And that's why, going back to what you were saying at the start, sometimes we can be afraid of change, but just even making that one little change, you just do not know the ripple effect that will have, not just in your own life, but wherever it hits. It's so cool, isn't it?
It's a beautiful thing to see. And, as I said, you get those messages, but then, the joy that is absolutely, I'm happy and, feeling very emotional. And you can just imagine that 1,000 times on the other end of the phone.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And I think the more you can help people, and the more you can, help humanity in that way, I think the better the world is for it. I think we need a lot more of it. A lot more good news.
Absolutely. That's our mission. We'll make it happen. Don't you worry about that.
Exactly. I'm with you.
I love it. I'm so loving chatting to you. I have been talking for a while. Is there anything on your heart that we haven't talked about yet that you would love to share and have people hear?
Look, I think as with anything, if you're struggling with something, if you're, know someone that's trying to conceive, if, I speak to parents as well who have children that are trying to conceive that just don't know how to support them, reach out, because I think the more you can support people through this time of trying to conceive and the other health issues that they've got around that, the more empowered those people are when they're undergoing what they're going through. And I think being afraid to reach out and ask because, oh, it's not happening to me, it's happening to my sister, or I've had this, is make that step, reach out. I've had people, as I said, parents reach out to me. I've had friends reach out to me on behalf of their own other halves of a friendship as well. They've been too, worried about reaching out, so their friends will reach out on their behalf. But reach out and have the conversation, because the more we talk about things, the less mystery it is around it. There's a big mystery around people trying to conceive, in terms of, it's considered a very private topic. They don't want to talk about it. They don't tell their work colleagues. They don't tell a lot of their family and friends. So it's a very isolating experience for a lot of men and women. And if we could open up that conversation, if we can have more people talk about it, what they're going through, so that they have that support system, even if it's not in the workplace, outside of the workplace, the friends, family members, etc. More conversation about things, and any health issue demystifies it. Now it's commonplace. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's not something to hide, which a lot of people do. They hide what they're going through. And I say there's never such a thing as too much support. You can never have too much support. The more support you have, the bigger your circle and your crew of people around you, the better you're going to have an outcome, because you've got all these people that are cheering for you and that are there for you. And so for me, what is close to my heart is opening up that conversation, is to having more people talk about it, not keeping it a secret, talk about it, not just in the Facebook groups, but talk about it with your family members, your friends, and reach out for support. If you don't know how to support someone, reach out, connect. We can give you some tips and tricks to help people that are on that journey. So for me, the biggest thing is talking about it more and opening up that conversation, so that there's more authentic support and connection and more understanding, more compassion. Because a lot of it, as I said, in the clinical setting is cold and it's sterile, and as I said, you keep that secret, you don't tell anyone, and it's not healthy. So that's I wish that would happen a lot more than it does, because then we could really get some movement into education and helping people that never need to go there, hopefully never have that issue, because then it will open up that conversation and it will flow. And the younger people will actually get on board and actually be part of that conversation. So that's what's closest to me, because I have these conversations all the time, and they're not telling anyone, they're not telling work, and it's just this big secret. And I don't think it should be a secret.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. And I'm so glad you said that too, because people do have a shame around it, and it's not to be ashamed of. This is just part of the story, and to be able to talk about it, like you said, and just make it so that people can support. And also I love what you said about people who may not know how to support their loved one who's trying to get pregnant. Like, they're still part of the picture. They're part of the family or the dynamic or whatever it might be. So for them to be able to talk about it too, otherwise everything just stays under the rug, under the carpet, and it's all just hush hush, and that doesn't serve anyone, does it?
No. And that's I think the biggest thing, because they're starting to get there now with policies in workplaces for fertility leave and things like that, which is important. I mean, we have sick leave and they tend to use it quite quickly, but if you're trying to conceive and it's going on for quite some time, you're going to run out of sick leave pretty quickly. So even those conversations and opening that up so that it's a little bit more compassionate and conducive to them having the treatment they need. And it would be the same for other chronic health conditions. They should have the ability to do that. You think of people getting treatment for other conditions as well. If it's something that's long-term and ongoing, otherwise chronic condition, then, you know, workplaces are starting to recognize that, which I think is, again, another important step, because not only do you have this problem, you've got the financial aspect of that problem, and then you've got, okay, the workplace, how do I deal with that and have the time off that I need to in order to have that treatment? So we're getting there, but it's a slow process. I think if the conversation was more open and it was, you know, less of this secret and more open conversation, we could facilitate more change. And that's a significant change for anyone, women and men. What would help? That would help, because that would, again, be another pressure that they don't have to worry about, where they can have some, you know, compassionate leave, and that can be part of their work agreement as well.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that, fertility leave or something like that. I mean, that makes total sense as well. We want to bring beautiful children into the world and have beautiful people running around the planet. So, you know, it's you're so right. We've just got to talk about it more, don't we?
Yeah, more conversation, and communicating these ideas will lead to change, and that change will be so much more support for the people that need it. And as I said, you know, you've got the fertility group, but you've also got anyone with a chronic health condition. If you've got a chronic health condition, you're struggling to, you know, deal with that and work and fit it in with your sick, like, it doesn't work. So opening it up for this group is fantastic, but it will also benefit all other health groups, anyone with a chronic health problem, because you can start to see those changes with workplaces become more flexible and adaptive, which they have over the last 4.5 years anyway, but we need more change so that, you know, people can live healthier, more balanced lifestyles and get the help they need when they need it.
Absolutely. Oh, I've just loved chatting with you today, Sophia. You've just got so much wisdom there. And I can imagine there's a lot of people who will be thinking, man, I need to speak to this woman. I need to get into her clinic. I need to have a conversation. How can people find you and reach out to you, Sophia? What's the best way?
Yeah, so the best way to reach out to me is through my website, which is the IVF Coaching Clinic. So www.ivfcoachingclinic.com.au. And there's a button in the top right-hand corner. You just click on that and you can book in and have a phone call. So that's probably the easiest way. I have people reach out to me on social media, Facebook and Instagram as well. But yeah, any of those modes. I'll give you the link so that they can connect, and also the link to my podcast. So if you want to have a look at any of there were a number of them, but any of the studies and things that I was mentioning before, I'll give you a link to the podcast so that people can jump in and have a look there, so they don't have to hunt around. They can just click on the links.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And for those people who are listening and might be driving right now, is your Instagram the same, like your social media handles the same as your website?
Yeah, IVF Coaching Clinic, same as well. So yeah, absolutely. I'll give you all those links. But yeah, the website, if you want to actually book a call, is the easiest way, to book in.
That is so awesome. Sophia, I have absolutely loved chatting to you today. I just want to thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and just your big heart. It's just been amazing. And while I'm thanking you as well, I just want to thank you at home for tuning into this epic chinwag with the amazing Sophia. I hope you have got so much out of it. I know that I have. And if, as always, leave a comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Always love hearing from you. But Sophia, I just want to say thanks again for being here and just for being you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been my pleasure.
Thanks, Sophia.